Hello there world, I'm the Talking Mausoleum, and today it's been pretty much exactly 2 weeks since the patch 1.06 released for Elden Ring. So I wanted to give myself enough time here to really test everything out before I give you my thoughts on how these changes affected PvP, what got better, and also what might still need some adjustments. And also I'm just not as fast as the other guys on YouTube. By the way, the next episode of our PvP guide will release next week. I just wanted to mention that real quick since my last video on Poise brought so many of you to subscribe to my channel. So hello to all my new friends out there, thank you so much for your support and trust, you beautiful sexy people. Getting all that positive feedback really felt amazing, so I will continue to work hard to improve my channel and bring you all the Elden Ring PvP information that you could want. Alright. So we did of course do an initial overview of patch 1.06 when it released, so if you're looking for an overview on all its changes and bug fixes, check out the video in the top right corner. But after pretty much living in the lands between for the last 2 weeks, I can comfortably say that patch 1.06 is the biggest, most positive change FromSoft brought to Elden Ring's PvP till now. Seriously, like if you stopped playing before or are still on the fence about whether or not you wanna get back into Elden Ring PvP, give it a try because it's tons of fun right now. The biggest individual adjustment here is certainly the way you can now be summoned as well as invade all over the map. Like regardless of whether you just want to co-op, help people with different bosses or areas, or if you're looking to invade, this change single-handedly increases the enjoyment you get out of the PvP tenfold. And honestly, it's kind of amazing that it took them so long to implement a feature like that in their games. So from what I can tell, the only requirement for an area to be included in the pool of locations that you can potentially invade or be summoned into is that you already went to that area once in your own world. Doesn't seem to matter whether or not you lit a site of grace there or killed the boss or anything, and there also seems to be no minimum distance that you have to be in order to invade a certain area. So you can, for example, hang out at the beach in the southern Weeping Peninsula and still invade Halictree or vice versa. It's literally the whole map. The matchmaking stayed the same of course, you still have to consider your level and your weapon level, so luckily my video on that topic isn't just worthless now. Also, you can even PvP in Lindell before it's turned to ash, even if you already defeated Malekith in your own world. Which is just amazing because it's a fantastic area for invasions especially, and I was really bummed about being locked out of Lindell on my main PvP character since I already defeated all the bosses there. It's really hard to overstate how great it feels getting to PvP in so many different locations, a lot of which you would never think to go to in the first place, since there's just so much variety now. And you know, being able to search the whole map for players also drastically reduces the time you have to wait for invasions. So before the patch my usual waiting time for an invasion was around 2 to 5 minutes I would say, maybe 7 or even 10 at times. And now a lot of the times I just jump from invasion to invasion almost instantly. Of course there are still sometimes intervals where you have to wait a bit longer, but at least for me that was rarely over 2 or 3 minutes, which is a massive improvement. The only small issue with this new system is that as an invader you will now get to more invasions where you spawn in right as the host enters a boss fog, since bosses are of course when a lot of players summon for help, but I think that's a pretty small price to pay for all the benefits that feature brings us. Patch 1.06 also brought us a bunch of balance changes, and as far as I can tell all of them worked out pretty much exactly as planned. No, seriously. So first off, Bloodhound Step was thankfully nerfed and you honestly rarely ever see it anymore. Like, so rarely that I didn't even find some proper footage to include here. But even when you see it, Bloodhound Step's most annoying property was always that you could infinitely run away as long as you had FP, while also being invincible, and that's pretty much gone now because you can't do that anymore. It's still a good tool for evading damage in a tight situation, but I actually think that's pretty fine and might even be a good thing, since now I actually feel comfortable using it when I'm cornered by a gank of 3 or whatever to avoid being blended to death, whereas before it just felt like cheating. Rivers of Blood of course was also nerfed, but people definitely still use that, and in a way it's almost like, why? Yes, the bleed up is still there, but now it's much more reasonable, and while the Ash of War itself is still fast and also cool, I do feel like it might even be better to just use a different katana where you can use different Ashes of War and also have it scale to different stats. So don't get me wrong, I really like that Rivers of Blood got a nerf and it functions much more neatly now as a powerful but more balanced weapon, But looking at something like Moonwale, which is still as overpowered as ever, it's kinda funny to see how normal Rivers of Blood feels now. As far as smaller changes are concerned, like Unblockable Blade being better, Glintstone Pebble being worse, or Stars of Ruin being not so tracking anymore, all of those have worked out pretty well, although I have to say that I was never really that bothered by that stuff as everyone else. But for those matchups where you do run into these skills, it's definitely more fair and enjoyable now. Glintstone Pebble in particular not being a true combo anymore is really nice. Also, they removed the infinite health regen glitch, which was to be expected I guess, but that was also really important. When they announced in the patch notes that greatswords and curved greatswords would have faster recoveries for a lot of their animations, I was really hoping that would give these weapons a boost, and it certainly does, but they still feel kinda lackluster to me. Which is kinda sad, since they're the weapon class with the most options in all of Elden Ring. It's not like they're unusable or anything, just that nothing in their moveset really stands out as being better than everything else. Like in a duel, greatswords at least have some good combo potential, like the jumping light into a regular light for example, although I'm still not quite sure if that's really a true combo or not. But when you look at range and speed, they still feel like the worst option in comparison to Halberds, Reapers or Great Spears. And in every situation apart from a proper duel, their shortcomings become even more apparent. The dual-wielded jump attack can do some insane damage, but landing one of those isn't really an easy feat, and I think the best thing From could do is to make the greatsword's running attacks just a little faster, so they're not as easy to avoid. But for now, make sure to put some fast or far-reaching Ashes of War like Double Slash or Sword Dance on your greatsword. Again, Elden Ring PvP at the moment is its best it's ever been. It feels much more active again, and if you have even the slightest wish to try it out, you really should. And if you find yourself dying over and over because you don't yet know how to fight other players, check out my Elden Ring PvP guide series, and maybe even subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of the upcoming episodes. Also consider leaving me a like if you enjoyed this video so far, since there's nothing as easy for you and as beneficial for my still very small channel. But I also wanted to talk about what I feel still needs changing, because while FromSoft improved on a lot of things in patch 1.06, there is also stuff that stayed completely untouched. And for me, there are really 4.5 big things that I feel should still be adjusted. So first off, the overall damage you can deal is still insanely high. Way too many things in Elden Ring have the potential to kill you in 1 or 2 hits, and that makes a lot of PvP encounters pretty short and also much too swingy. So they could continue to nerf the damage of the most outrageous outliers, but a much better and pretty easy fix in my eyes would be to just give everyone more health. And for that I really like the suggestion I heard from G9 of giving everyone, the host and summons as well as invaders, access to their Great Rune. With this change, Morgoth's Great Rune for example could become an almost obligatory choice along with the already recommended 60 vigor at high levels, and that would net you something like close to 3000 HP, which I think would solve the damage problem much more neatly than painstakingly adjusting individual damage values of all the weapons in the game. Something that I don't think FromSoft will do or is even realistic. Next up is summon downscaling. So as some of you might already know, phantoms you summon via passwords are already scaled down somewhat in health and damage to match the host's level more closely, but that happens way too little. If a level 100 host summons a level 500 phantom, their health and damage reduction is pretty much laughably low, which makes them completely overpowered both in PvP as well as in PvE. Just increasing the downscaling significantly would fix that, as having summons already makes the game much easier for the host, even without those summons being able to effortlessly destroy everything in their path. Thirdly, crafting materials. It really makes no sense to me at all that not every single crafting material isn't infinitely and easily buyable from the shop at Roundtable Hold. So, of course, to ensure a good initial playthrough experience, players shouldn't just have access to infinite crafting materials from the get-go, but after you've beaten the Elden Beast, there's also really no reason to have you go out and farm random sheep or mushrooms for hours on end just to be able to get the throwing pots you want. All that does is reward players who can dupe or trade items with other players while punishing everyone else who can't. Just unlocking all crafting materials for purchase after finishing the game would be a very easy solution to that problem. There's also the issue of dedicated shield poke builds not really having a lot of good counters at the moment, which might make them frustrating to play against in the long run. although I still want to test out the new circling capabilities of the changed quickstep Edge of War a little more against that, because if quickstepping around your opponent for a backstab is actually consistently possible, that could be a pretty viable counter to shield builds. And there are other weapons that I feel like would deserve a little bit of a nerf, like the Moonveil Katana for example. That one's just a little bit too high damaging for also having such a useful and versatile moveset, and with the Moonveil being as good as it is, there's basically no reason for an intelligence build to use any other weapon, which is just kinda boring. Mokewind Spear is another one that might just be a little too powerful with its Ash of War, but overall I feel we're in a pretty good spot as far as individual weapon balance is concerned. The last thing I want to talk about is the way poise works in Elden Ring. And I swear it's not just because talking about poise got me like 50 new subscribers last time. But if you want some more detailed information on what I'm talking about here, you're welcome to check out that video. Now, a lot of people dislike the way poise is set up in Elden Ring, and that's probably mainly because the way as it stands now, there are basically only two types of builds. Those who can poise through an attack of heavier weapons like greatswords, halberds, great spears, scythes and so on, and those who can't. And you can probably already guess which one would have the upper hand in a duel. See, in my eyes, poise in the Souls games works best as a mechanic when everyone is on equal footing, because otherwise the way you have to play as the non-poise having dude doesn't make for the most engaging combat for both sides. And in general, fighting while being able to tank a hit makes for more interesting fights in my opinion. Like, not being able to poise through a Colossal is totally fine, those are very tough and slow weapons to use, but halberds, great spears and so on are very good and also very common in PvP. But in the end, the poise system is not gonna make or break PvP for me, especially since the only fix I can see would be to drastically change poise values of multiple weapon classes and armors and completely rebalance the whole system, and that's something FromSoft will probably not do. So that's pretty much everything for now when it comes to the new state of Elden Ring's PvP. Like I said, I feel like we're in an amazing place right now where PvP is just tremendous fun, much better than it has been before the patch, so yeah, I would highly encourage you to try it out for yourself. If you need more information on anything from build building to combat strategies, check out my PvP guide series and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of the upcoming episodes. Thank you so much for listening, have a wonderful day and see you very soon!